events as well.
So they'll have to go to YouTube for that.
No, then I'll share this to Facebook as well.
Okay.
So, no, then I'll share this.
Well, creative solutions are fabulous problem-solving expertise.
Okay, we can get started. And let's go rolling, and I will share this in Facebook as well.
Super cool.
Good evening,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome to another session of We Care series. Of course, this one was not very easy. We had to kind of use our technical heads here. There were some difficulties with live streaming, but there's something you learn every day. So that was good. So hope all of you are having a great day. And today, for those of you who don't know about us, maybe it's more just about IWF and our We Care series. So IWF was started in 2015, and we're celebrating our 10th year this year. So we're very excited about that. And IWF helps to integrate Indian women here to Finnish society. So we do a lot of events related to, we have cultural events, fitness events, and We Care is one of our podcast series that we have, which is very close to our heart, where we bring in some important topics to you. And in that context, today we have our special guest, Daryl Seeger, who's a women leadership strategist, joining us today for a coffee chat. Okay, shouldn't say coffee chat. I don't have the coffee with me in front of me, but maybe he does. Hopefully, Daryl will have something there with you. But yeah, today, every day you learn something, right? Today, our Facebook live stream did not work, and we had to think of many other things, how we still reach you. And hopefully, you could still watch us live, and hopefully, you could still ask questions here as well on this YouTube live. But before I go more in advance, we also have our co-host here, Vaishali. Vaishali, would you like to first introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. We were the early ones, me and Ramya, I think almost 2 or 3 years ago when the COVID hit. And meeting in person became an impossible thing. That's when we kind of changed gears and moved our engagement online, more in this format. And that's when we started the We Care series. And I think fast forward 3-4 years, now we've done more than 20 or 25 We Care series on different topics, still all relevant to women empowerment and stuff. I'm Vaishali Doshi, personally working as sales director at HCL Technologies, and deeply involved in all kinds of DEI initiatives. So happy to have you here, Daryl. And we recently met at International Women's Day celebration. So thoroughly impressed by your profile and the kind of stuff you do for the women empowerment, for women leadership. Having said that, I think it would be best if you introduce yourself rather than us telling what you do. So I think let's begin with your introduction for our audience here.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I was just going to say that, Ramya, you didn't actually introduce yourself fully first, so maybe you want to introduce yourself fully. Like,
hey, Daryl, everyone
then
in
I'll go.
Finland knows Ramya, I believe.
Oh, okay, all right, fine. I mean, fine in that case.
Yeah, but maybe a quick introduction as well. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Ramya. I live here in Espoo with my 2 sons and my husband, and I work in Konecranes Global as an IT quality assurance manager. So yeah, it's been 14 years in Finland now, and safe to say that we could call it my first home now already. So, and I've been here with IWF. It's been 10 years now, and it's such a great community where you could really meet people and network and get to know each other. And I think one thing I've had learned from it, and one thing I've gained from it for the last 10 years, is that the people that you meet, they empower you so much and inspire you so much. So it's really good and really nice. So if you're new to this place, and if you really need, if you're looking to meet people, I believe you should join this community where it gives you a great opportunity to meet people. Thank you. And over to you, Daryl.
Super cool. Yes, I can say having met you all in person last week, it's a real positive sense of community. I really liked it. So thank you for having me there. So hello, my name's Daryl. I'm a leadership or women's leadership strategist and coach, and I've been working in tech for the past 5 years. My background is in coaching and consulting, which I've been doing for over 15 years, working with companies and individuals all around the world to help them get to where they want to be, both personally and professionally. And more recently, my focus is very much on supporting women in tech to help them thrive in male-dominated spaces. Although I'm not in Finland, I am just across the water over in Estonia, in Tallinn, which is where I've also been for 5 years.
All right. Ramya, if I may begin just a little bit, still building upon your introduction, Daryl. So I've heard quite a lot of the coach who are leadership coaches or senior leadership coaches. What brought you this point that you want to focus on women leadership coaching or like promoting that part? So what brought you to this corner or this particular topic?
It's a great question, and actually it's taken me a long time to get this point. So I've been working with male and female clients all over the past 15 years, but the change to focus specifically on women is quite a recent thing. I'm part of a business mentoring and networking group that helped me to understand the structure of my business, because I have no idea, or I had no idea. I'm getting an idea about how to build a business. Know how to coach. I've been doing that for a long time. I'm very good at my craft, but in terms of building a business, I didn't have a clear idea. And it came about that through reflection, it was just, I needed to connect with my why. So why do I do what I do? And it was through this process that I connected to my why. And that's very much related to my mother. So my parents got divorced when I was 18. My father left for another woman. And so my mother had to go back to work. Actually, it wasn't when I was 18, that was much later. But I think I was about 14 or 15 when the whole process started. So I saw how my mother had to go back to work, how she really struggled to go back to work, to integrate herself back into that environment, but also raise 2 kids at the same time. And I think this drew me very close to wanting to support women. And that's been there all throughout my life, but I didn't create this connection as to, okay, why do I feel this strong pull to want to help and support women? So when I went through this mentoring process, I really connected with my why, which is, getting women's voices heard, getting them seen, having them be appreciated and valued in the way that they need to, especially in male-dominated spaces. So I guess I bring a male perspective, but also having lived through those troubling experiences, then the idea of supporting women to get to that place that they want to be as well.
All right. I think that's always the case, right? Usually with great leaders, there's always incidences in your life that bring you to those points, which teaches you what you are doing or kind of takes you to the direction of what you eventually end up doing, which you are doing. Your business is about supporting women. Yeah. And just still a build up on the same thing, that can you throw a light on some statistics, because you're specifically focusing on women in tech, and I know there's a lot of talk around the industry about the percentages of women in tech, and then if you go to the percentage of women leaders in tech, it becomes even skewed. And then I will ask you also a more difficult one, because I'm a woman in tech leadership in sales. So we'll come to that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We'll come to that later. But if you could little bit give idea, and that will set the ground for today's discussion, because that also helps to understand why you are doing what you're doing and why it's very important.
Sure. Okay, you put me on the spot with some statistics. Fine. So, I mean, there's some statistics.
It doesn't have to be accurate.
There were some statistics I was reading. So, for example, women make 26% less than men in tech generally speaking. So there's a huge gender disparity between the pay amounts. I think when you're talking about leadership, if we look at the Fortune 500, I think it's less than 10% of leaders or senior leaders are women. And then if you look at, for example, the startup scene and companies that are growing, less than 2% of VC funding goes to female founders in the tech space, but across the board. And in tech, yeah, there's still disparities in terms of the gender balance. So, 70-30 tends to be where it sits. Obviously, it varies from company to company and country to country, but the numbers are still quite significant in terms of the gaps and the differences between where we are and where it would be nice to be.
Yeah. All right. All right. And as I said that because I had done some study around that when you go to tech leadership and then in sales, the number goes down to single digits always,
Wow,
less than
okay.
5 or 7% roughly. Yeah. But Ramya, do you want to take up next? Because
Yeah.
of course, I have lots of questions in my mind popping up, but why don't you go next?
Yeah. Well, when I was like, maybe just a bit of a background as well for the viewers. I met Darren last year, and I think it was in an Agile conference. And of course, it's been inspiring ever since to read about you and all the good things that you've been doing, and especially for women. Of course, I don't know how many men are out there doing what you're doing. So thank you for that. But I was really intrigued with the statistics also that I saw in your website where you said there are, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are almost 2,000 women leaders that you've kind of worked with over 20 countries. So what has that experience been like?
Great. I mean, I think it's inspiring to see how skilled women are listen, the statistics show women make the best leaders. That's the data show that. And so it's more about just having people step into spaces where they are allowed to believe in themselves, where they're valued. And, women are unstoppable when they're in that space. So yeah, it's been inspiring. The 2,500 leaders, that's a mix of men and women. So it's not just purely women. I would say it's skewed slightly in terms of women to men 60-40, but that statistic was more just to cover these are the amount of leaders that I've worked with that give me, I guess, a bit of grounding to know what I'm talking about.
That's interesting. And have you particularly, come up with any strengths that you've already kind of identified, some commonalities per se for women compared to men?
Well, I mean, these are the traditional ones, I guess, of generally women being more intuitive and emotionally intelligent than men. And also the vulnerability element, I think, is really a superpower. It's often seen as a negative in the workplace to be or to share or to express emotions, but this is how we connect to other human beings. If you think about the people in your life who you're most connected to, we've shared emotions with them, partners, friends, family. And this is just something where women excel. So when it comes to culture and creating a harmonious culture, this is where women have great strengths, as well as obviously, I'm sure, based on particular roles, technical strengths based on what they do as well. But if we're talking about advantages, men over women, which I think was your perspective, then yeah.
I think, Daryl, Ramya, if I may comment, what you said, the emotional intelligence or something really touched me because where you are allowed to express yourself or be vulnerable. Again, I come from the industry, tech industry, and in roles where there's more men compared to women. And I think men don't express themselves or they just shrug it off. But there have been occasions where I have been really emotional or really full of kind of feelings. And in a way, I was not sure if I'm allowed to express myself or what. I was indirectly being told that, come on, don't be a crybaby. But it's kind of a thing that there are emotions, and work is where you spend 8 to 10 hours of your day. So there will be moments where you will have, and it's good if there are leaders like you are bringing that amount of balance or intelligence that men should understand, that people are allowed to or should be able to express themselves, and there should be room for all kinds of feelings or emotions, even at work.
100%. Yeah, I think, there's a fallacy. I think this goes back quite a long way in terms of, there's work me and home me, and the two are separate and they should never meet. I mean, this is just unrealistic. What affects us at home impacts us at work. What affects us at work impacts
Exactly.
us at home. I would say, yes, men might compartmentalize, which I don't think is particularly healthy. I mean, I know it's not healthy because I experience a lot of mental health challenges by simply that, not feeling like I could express my emotions. So I bottle up everything inside. I mean, there's reasons why, yeah, a lot of men struggle with mental health issues. There's a reason why there's high rates of suicide, is because they don't open up about these things that women generally are better at opening up about to each other. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to create a work environment where it's not seen as a weakness to express emotion, where it's not seen as, yeah, as you said, you call it being called a crybaby, or to, suck up your feelings or just deal with it.
Exactly.
I don't think this is particularly helpful in any way, but there still is a long way to go to shift those mindsets and then equip people with the tools to be able to be comfortable with somebody else being upset, somebody else being not okay. I think the other aspect is that people feel uncomfortable if, let's say, I was crying in the office. A lot of people would think, oh my God, how do I handle this? And actually, I did. I went through a very messy breakup, and I had to go into the office the next day, and somebody asked me how I was, and I just broke down in tears. But it was two female colleagues who I'd actually not really spoken to before, who provided me the most comfort and support. But I think, yeah, enabling workplaces to, or having conversations around this, but also just equipping people with the skills to be able to handle a situation where somebody is expressing emotions.
Spot on.
How do you then
So much needed.
identify your own right balance as to, when it's too much or when it's like, okay, good enough to share or good enough to, is there something like that where you need to know the right balance at all?
I think it's a great question, but I would then ask, what is the right balance? What is too much? Who determines what too much is?
Yeah.
There was interestingly, there was somebody who came to work. I was delivering a workshop, and there were other co-facilitators. And literally the week before, his father had passed away. But he was not expressing any emotions. I mean, that's fine. Maybe that's how he dealt with it. But by the same token, I just thought, it's okay to let it out. It's okay to not be okay. There's a reason why I have a tattoo saying it's okay to not be okay. I mean, this is part of my mental health struggles, but I think it's so important to not have to be, yeah, this perfect person or this smiley person the whole time. We don't have to be in it. I don't think it's great to be that way. There's this notion of toxic positivity. So I don't know what the right balance is. I think that's a personal feeling. That's also then, how does your workplace or the people around you in your workplace support that? But I think just having conversations around these types of topics is probably a good starting point.
Maybe coming back to then the workplace, or let's put it Finnish workplace, which is across the seas, but I'm sure you're very well versed with Finland or the Nordic work culture. And what do you think, are women properly represented here in the leadership roles in these countries? Again, just giving little bit of a teaser, because while Finland or the Nordic countries are assumed, or not assumed, are the most progressive, forward-looking countries in the world when it comes of the standard of living or healthcare or technology advancement. Have these countries, or has Finland done enough to have enough women on the leadership roles, especially also in the technology landscape?
I mean, I think there's always more to do, as the the ex-Finnish minister said, that the numbers were still whatever it was. I think she said 70%, 30%, 70% male, 30% female.
Exactly.
And as it's again statistically shows that it gets less, or the number of women in leadership roles is less as it progresses higher in the organization. And I think that is a challenge, and that's because workplaces are still not geared up to women. I think we talked about it potentially as well. For example, air conditioning, generally speaking, is set, at least it has been in the UK, it's set to the weight of an 80-kilogram man. So just that tiny bias has quite a significant impact in terms of the environment as to whether women feel comfortable there. So I think there's environmental factors, there's cultural factors, and then there's obviously the behavioral factors, which still need to be challenged to make change happen more quickly. I mean, the fact that we're still having this gender bias or gender imbalance conversations in 2025 says a lot.
Yeah, but so that clearly says that it is already challenging for even Finnish women to be up in the leadership positions. So then what do you recommend should kind of expat women like us do, like Indian women or women who are immigrants or expats in these countries, where I'm feeling even where the locals are a little bit struggling to find or find their route up or be visible. What do you recommend, or what are the traits or the qualities that Indian women, for that matter, because we are here speaking about Indian women in Finland, have to be able to progress themselves to leadership roles and be visible and sustainable at that place as well?
I think the visibility is a key one. So ensure that you are visible, and this comes down to tracking your achievements, recording them, and promoting them. Now, a lot of people get very hesitant about, I don't want to blow my own horn or shout about what I'm doing, and it's not really about that. It's just about owning what you have done, and then making sure that the right people in the organization can see that. And this ties very much into networking within the organization. There's this notion of a personal brand. So every person has a personal brand within the organization. So, how are you being represented when you're not in the room? What are people saying about you when you're not there? And so networking widely across the organization is important. And then things like sponsorship as well. So having somebody who is a senior partner in the organization or somebody who recognizes your attributes, your skills, your qualities, and will advocate for you as well. So that is definitely something that I find, and I recommend to all women, is have or find somebody who can sponsor you, male, female, it doesn't matter, in the direction that you want to go in with the organization, and they can vouch for you when you don't happen to be there. And then the other element is personal confidence. I know that just from the way you phrased it, and your question is like, okay, well, if Finnish women are struggling, well, we're expats, we're foreigners, we're not from here. There's a language element, there's, maybe the cultural element as well. And yes, these are present, but also some of that is, what's our mindset in terms of that? Do I see myself as, oh, it's uncomfortable, it's hard? Okay, if I've made that decision, then it's possibly going to be harder than it needs to be. If I take a mindset of, okay, cool, I bring a diversity that they don't have here. It's a different way of viewing exactly the same situation, and one is slightly more empowering than the other.
Yeah, I think you rightly touched, because my follow-up question was going to be that how do you build the confidence? Because typically that's what happens. Like, I understand that what you mentioned, bring the visibility, find yourself some sponsorship and kind of speak about your work, what you do. But then usually it happens that you might be still lower on your self-confidence, and then that adds more challenge. So I understand. And it is just a mindset, like you rightly said. I still recall I was directly mapping to a C-level executive with one of my customers, and I was replacing one of the white Finnish man. And I was very nervous because I was really feeling, how am I going to have that meaningful conversation? And the customer started asking me in a joking way, oh, we are not going to talk about golf and motorbikes. So what are we going to talk about? And I was a bit nervous, but I was like, hey, we are going to talk business. We are here to talk business. And it's been 2-3 years now, and we have the best relationship with my customer. And we are able to talk politics and every other thing, just not golf and motorbikes. But that's the thing. But what I'm trying to say is that believing in yourself that it's okay, I can be relevant and I can bring value to the conversation rather than
100%.
undermining yourself. So yeah.
100%. And that's what they can talk about golf and motorbikes. Doesn't mean you have to talk about the same thing. Your relationship is going to be based on what you bring to the table. And that's
Exactly.
completely different what somebody else brings. They always say the best way to make yourself unhappy is to compare yourself to others. And it's entirely natural. I do it as well. I do it all the time. I try to catch myself. But especially in a work environment, if we perceive a white Finnish man to be there and we perceive ourselves to be here, then yeah, it's going to be hard to fill that gap. And what we need to do is just perceive that, okay, this is over here and that's different. This is what he offers and this is what I offer. And really look at our core strengths, embrace them and lean into those as opposed to seeing what we don't have.
Yeah, agree.
It's really interesting. I mean, when you're talking about your own self-confidence and personal branding and networking and all of that. But yeah, when you're already in the leadership role, then of course that's one thing. But if you want to kind of climb the ladder to get there, of course, yes, you need to have people who could advocate for you and things like that. But it's generally not always that's not the case, isn't it? So what could you like probably do more or kind of identify, to show the diversity that you could bring into the table?
A good question. And I think you sort of answered it in the last part is, yeah, show what you can do that is different. And a lot of my answers are going to say it depends. It depends on the culture. It depends on the organization. It depends on the level of support that you have. But I still believe that you can network early in your career in the organization. And in fact, it's often easier the earlier you do it. It gets a little bit harder later on because by doing so, and by being curious, you find out, okay, well, how does this particular organization work? What do I need to do in order to be seen or to be more visible? Or what connections would be useful in terms of then gaining me some influence within certain departments? And the more curious you can be and the wider you can spread that net, I think then that gives you more opportunity later on. So I don't think there's an early or a late. I think there's just you can do that at any stage.
Mm.
So
I'm
maybe
not sure. Maybe I didn't answer your question. Did I answer your question, Ramya, or did I waffle?
No, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, again, just linking to the previous question, like we were talking about the self-confidence. While, okay, let's say that Indian women, again, in this case, have come, yes, they are confident, but they still need a kind of a kickstart or some thing to establish themselves. I think when we were speaking at the International Women's Day, when we met last last week, there was also a lot of emphasis on networking. So maybe can you give some advice or tips? How can they become more visible, or how can they start networking? Because even though I've lived in Finland 15 years, I do lack that network. Although I'm one of the
You're part of one. Yes, you run one.
Yeah, but still I'm trying to really say that I do lack a lot of networks. And then I'm thinking, if somebody is new in this industry, how do they build networks? Like if you could list, do three things or something.
Okay, so let me if I can just throw it back and ask you a question. Okay, so what is the challenge that you face with networking?
So basically, for example, today I was having a lunch with a very senior ex-Nokia person, some vice president. And then he was just mentioning that he was part of this network and that network and this board chamber. And I was feeling I'm not even aware of all of this. And then I asked him, how did you get to know about it? And he said, yeah, well, I was at Nokia and this guy recommended me to that group and that guy recommended me to that group. And now I'm part of a lot of such networking groups. Either I don't have those kind of colleagues or allies who are recommending me where I should be, but I don't know what are the groups where I should network, where I should hang out. And I think a lot of female leaders, especially I know Indian leaders, are struggling with this. We don't know where do we hang out. So that's what I'm coming to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know Rami had a question. So my follow-up question is, so when he mentioned those, what did you then say to him?
Well, I did, of course, tell him that. Do you think I could be a part of those networking groups, or unless they are closed groups or something? Of course, then with every group, there needs to be, do you fit there? What value you bring or what value you get? And
Mhm.
I was just trying to understand. I even asked, tell me, how do I get into these kind of, groups? Because uh, he was mentioning there is some, let's say, some venture capitalists, they meet once a month. They are talking about
Mhm.
the startup ecosystem. And I was like, yeah, it sounds interesting. Even I want to know.
Okay.
You need to be meeting those kind of people, and I kind of feel that I am not meeting enough of those kind of people. That's
Mhm.
just an example I'm giving, but
Oh.
similarly, I know there's a lot of good women who are, let's say, in recruitment. Again, recruitment is all about networking, but they're struggling. How do we even get to the right places? Then we find the right networks, and
Mhm.
where we are able to bring value and grow. So
Mhm.
that's typically because when I am asking Finnish people, there's like, oh yeah, I know that because he was my classmate and he was my wife's friend
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
someone. That relations we don't have. We've not studied here. We don't have our relatives
Sure.
living here. So that's
Mhm.
a practical problem that comes up most of the times. So
Okay.
just asking, how do you get
Sure.
along, or is there any way?
Well, I've got more questions. So it's,
You can ask,
it's
of
sort of
course.
like a coaching session. Okay. So how many of those groups that he mentioned are you now going to join, or at least go and have an introductory
I have
session
not
with?
figured that out. He was going to send me a list of the groups, and then I would see where it
Okay.
would make sense. But at least, for example, I was very keen on understanding investment or VC funding.
Mhm.
I was interested more in some startup ecosystem. So at least those groups I would want to start going or visiting just for a coffee or
Mhm.
a glass of wine to understand what
Sure.
are they talking and how does it work.
Okay. So there's a couple of things in terms of how you ask the question. So you actually said the question really in terms of what you were saying afterwards. You could have just asked them, what's the guy's name? If you don't, okay, I'll use another name.
Yeah.
All right, you could say, he's talking about all these groups. You go, oh, that's great, Steve. What group do you think would be really valuable for me to join?
Mm.
Simple question. And he'll say, oh, I think this would be useful, this would be useful. But with your context, and again, it's not a criticism, it's an observation. It's like you felt that you didn't belong there or you didn't have permission to be there. And this is then there was a lot of doubt in terms of how you propose the questions and go, oh, why don't I know about that? And so there's a slightly strange dynamic in, if you don't feel like you deserve to be there, why is anybody going to invite you there? Whereas if you know that this is a place where you can offer value and that is going to be valuable for you, there's a very different context of how you are as a person, your energy in terms of who you're being when you have that sort of conversation. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
No, that makes sense. I understand that is more about what are the right kind of questions you ask. How do
Sure.
you uh,
But
become
that's
relevant there?
but
Yeah.
that's part of it. I'm just using your scenario, and
Yeah.
then if
Yeah.
we go back, then it's about asking the question. If you meet somebody and they're talking about a networking, oh great, what networking groups are you part of? I'm looking to join some new groups. How many people are actually asking the question? I'm guilty of that as well. I just kind of assume that somebody's going to say, oh my God, Daryl, quick, 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 come and join all these groups. Like, no, unless I ask the question, nobody is necessarily going to offer that information. So firstly is we need to ask the question because yes, we haven't got those initial relationships that people haven't had to invest in. So we have to be more proactive about it and go out and seek it. And then within that seeking, there has to be that confidence aspect of I deserve to be in that group.
Mm.
I have something to offer that group and it's going to be valuable for me. But if we're nervous or we don't feel like we belong, then that's going to stop us from actually asking that question. And maybe we ask it in a way that that person doesn't necessarily take it seriously. So there's two components combined. I think there's
Mm.
the curiosity, the questions, and then the confidence.
Then the confidence. Yeah.
When
So
you were
I
asking
think
this
Rami, yeah.
question, when you were asking this question, I think one thing that was going on in my mind is that quite often finding these networks aren't a problem for me, but maybe understanding my goal and prioritizing them, because also what happens is, Michelle, it's also for you, maybe we are wanting to be in many places at the same time. If our family situation, was different, we could be doing many, many things. And that's
Of course.
probably a challenge that many Indian women also have, that due to, family situation, they probably are not able to network enough. They don't have enough time to do what they would really, otherwise love to do. And that's sometimes where you need to kind of prioritize and seek your, understand your goal or where your interest lies and things like that.
Yeah.
To
I
be
think that-
honest, that's something that I kind of at times hate, because some people could be good at many things that you think, that you could be at different places at the same time and multitasking as well. But what do you think for this? Like, many women have the same challenge as to kind of wanting to network, but not being able to network. One, probably they don't know the networks, like how Vaishali said. But second is, like, even if you have those networks right in front of you, you probably don't have the bandwidth of time to kind of, do anything extra.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. I don't think there's a good answer to that one. The only thing I can suggest is I think there are more groups which are offering more flexibility. So it's not necessarily about in person. There are some online networking groups. And the interesting thing, so I'm going to be joining one that's US based, and this is more about sort of partner networking. So you meet with people in a room, but you tell them the people that you're looking for, and then they look at their network. And so it's more sort of indirect, but you build relationships with people in the networking group, and then you help them find who they're looking for, and they help you find who you're looking for. Yep. So that's a potential way that there's a more indirect way of approaching networking. But listen, I think time, and commitments, this makes it very challenging. So I'm not sure I have a perfect answer for that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think you just need to get more time, which is not available to any one of us. So
Or
I
you
think
or
it
you
is about
prioritize.
prioritizing.
There is the question of prioritizing. I mean, Ramya said that, she finds it easy to get into the group. So then, Vaishali, you should tap into Ramya and say, okay, cool. Well, if you happen to meet this person or somebody who does this, please connect me with them. And so it's leveraging the network that you have to get to the places that you maybe personally might not be able to access. But that's what using each other's strengths really lends well towards.
Maybe still one question on biases, like, although we want to look everything with the same set of lenses, there are biases, and mainly unconscious biases, which you don't necessarily see, but there are those unconscious biases. Or even for women to progress, there are some invisible barriers. How do you think we should address, or rather, I would put it the other way, it's not for women to address, it's for men to to address. How do they get rid of their biases so that it's giving everyone more equal opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's on both sides. The thing is, you're never going to get rid of your biases. It's not about that. Your biases exist. Inherently, biases aren't bad. They're just your brain's shortcut to a bit of information. It's because, our brains, they consume 20, it's, 2% of our body mass, but 20% of our energy. But so it likes being efficient. And a bias is just a shortcut so we don't have to process as much. And unfortunately, they're really deeply ingrained, and so we're not going to get rid of them. But what we can do is raise awareness around them and when they're having a less than desirable impact, and then we choose something differently. At least that's my belief. And the neuroscience say that the pathways are really well honed, and over time we can choose it, but it'll always still be there. But yeah, listen, there's still a lot of work to do. There's huge biases. We talked about, the emotional biases. There's the expectation for women to pick up the emotional load. So there's this invisible work that you mentioned earlier. And it's just about having more of these conversations and not being afraid to have difficult conversations. I think these days people don't like having difficult conversations. People struggle to disagree with people in an agreeable manner and to talk about the fact that, yeah, this is just the way I think. Okay, show me something new when I get new information and I can adjust how I think and see a certain situation. But it's the responsibility of both, I think, men and women to engage in conversations to then build the workplaces of the future that are less biased.
Yeah, I think it would mean educating everyone, the men and the women, to get, like you said, you can't get rid of your biases, but how you can tackle them, or at least give some room for an option or a alternative, that it's not
100%.
necessarily true what you are thinking.
Yeah.
I agree. Ramya, you wanna go next?
Yeah, we talked a lot about networking and then confidence and biases as well. But maybe one thing is, it would be nice that you find the right mentors to kind of be able to build this kind of strong professional networks and things like that and help you grow as well. How do you identify the right mentors?
I don't think you can identify the right mentors. I think you can identify people who you think, oh, this is, this could be somebody who I enjoy being mentored by. And then you've just got to go through the experience. And through the experience, you'll figure out, okay, is this the person that I want mentoring me or not? And bear in mind that every experience is a learning experience. So you might, work with somebody, you think, oh my God, that's awful. And then you go, okay, cool. Well, I know I don't want to do what they do, or I don't want to copy or behave in the way that they do. That's great. But now I can choose somebody who's going to support and who I can really learn from in a positive manner. So I don't think there is a right or wrong. It's just going to be dependent upon your personality, your desires, where you are on your journey, leadership or otherwise, in terms of then what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to just go with your instincts as well and what kind of works there. And yeah.
Yeah. And it's very time-based as well. What works for you now is probably not going to work for you in 6 to 12 months' time, but looking at what you need now is probably a great starting point.
What would you say for people who are having like a career stagnation in terms of growth, right? That you've been on the same role for so things like that. How do they kind of maybe like identify themselves? What is that they could do to reinvent themselves?
Sorry, just to be clear, so you're asking what can somebody do when they're feeling a bit stuck career-wise?
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, recognize it. Secondly, be okay with it. And thirdly, take it as a sign that, okay, cool, what I'm doing now is not necessarily what I want to be doing going forward. But then there's a process of self-reflection of getting clear on, okay, well, what is it that I do want next? I think a lot of people skip that step and just try to find something different. And I think it's important just to take a step back, because if you are feeling stuck, it's for a reason. And then it's looking at, okay, well, what is the reason that is causing this stagnation? And then where do I want to go next? So don't skip out the self-reflection part.
Yeah, I think that is kind of key there as well, that you kind of understand what's happening and sit and think about it and reflect a bit more.
Yeah, because it's easy to, they say, well, I can't even remember the phrase now, out of the frying pan into the fire. Is that the one? You just think, okay, something's not working. Let me find something else. But then because you haven't understood what it is that isn't working, the likelihood is that whatever you go to next, you will be facing the same issue or the same feeling. So it's really, really important.
Maybe I have a question with regards to these days, the corporate strategies that organizations are setting up, that they all have set up a DEI organization. They have set some targets and quotas. I think we briefly even discussed, at least one of my previous ex-employers had very ambitious targets. I'm not naming the company, on getting women leadership, being 50-50 and stuff. Lately, I just heard that they have actually abolished their whole DEI strategy and plan because they're getting a lot of backlash, right? So, because I know that when anything new comes, like when data had come, when AI had come, there's a whole buzz. But then after sometimes the dust settles in and people
Mhm.
might not even accept. How do you handle that? Because this is a real time problem, and if the organization stop dropping that idea, then we are getting or growing the gap even bigger. So that's my first question, and I
Mhm.
have a follow-up question on that, but maybe let's hear this one. Because at least I now have heard from two organizations where they had very ambitious strategies on getting to equal, and now they feel, okay, let's just drop it. We're not doing anything anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an area of my expertise, the whole DEI aspect. There's a lot of complication around it. I understand, I can see arguments from both sides of the spectrum. I don't know. We're going to have to see how it is. I'm hoping that there are going to be other policies in place that support, I think, what has been shown to be needed in organizations, in that more balance, more equity. So finding the right people for the roles, but making sure that they're actually looking in the right places or in different places to find that diversity. But yeah, I can't really speak to it in terms of, what it's going to look like going forward, because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see it
Okay.
as a great thing that they've been cancelled, because I think a lot of great work has been done in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
space.
because I think my follow-up question was pretty much in line with that, because now since there were targets and quotas or kind of a mandate
Mm.
to kind of bring more women on the board, promote more women, recruit more women, sometimes it was seen as being already biased or kind of at least seen by women that it's challenging the meritocracy, because I'm here because I deserve to be here and not just because of my gender. So,
Mhm.
that's also a big thing that was having a backlash from the women, or from the
Sure.
that, hey, I'm a deserving person. I'm not here just because the organization had a quota. So the downside of it was that also,
Mhm.
but kind of very tricky. How do you handle it and tackle it? Because
Completely.
you really need to push for that as well, but in the right way, so that it's
Yeah.
not again tilting on the other side. And any comments about it, or any thoughts around it?
It shouldn't be a tick box exercise. I think that's
Exactly.
potentially where the pushback came from, is that people maybe saw other people promoted and they saw it as, okay, well, it's just because they're a person of color, it's just because they're a woman or whatever. And so I think the concept, this is the way I picture it, the concept of DEI, I think is incredible. I think potentially in some cases the way it was applied or implemented was less than ideal, which is what caused some of these challenges. But absolutely, I think there's a lot of amazing women who deserve to be in those positions, and that should be recognized. And yeah, I mean, simple as that. It should be the best person for the role.
Hmm, agree.
Oh,
Ramya, you wanna
maybe
go ahead?
with that, I was just thinking, Daryl, when we kind of, knowing a little bit about you a bit more, I read somewhere about one of your clients that you kind of, with all the guidance that you've done, you've also helped with major conflict situations, how to do conflict resolutions, maybe, while also maintaining their mental strength and calmness and those kind of things. What kind of tips could you give for our viewers with those kind of situations, or how to kind of handle them better?
I think the first thing that I would say is just look at the human before you look at the situation. Just it's another person. They've got their own challenges, their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions behind it. Because I think a lot of time we get clouded by this is what they've done and this is what it represents. And listen, most of the time, people aren't intentionally trying to upset another person. It's just that we've had our values or our beliefs challenged, and then that's the reaction that comes from it. So my invitation is always to take a step back and just to think, and be curious. Okay, what is going on for that person? What could be happening for them? Because we only see a tiny proportion of somebody's life. So the way they're behaving, am I allowed to swear on this? they're behaving like an a-hole. Okay, I'll keep it slightly PG. There might be countless other things happening behind the scenes at home or whatever. Maybe they're struggling with something, maybe they've got ill parent or whatever. Because people's response generally in stressful situations is not the best of them. And conflict can bring up, that in people. But a lot of the time it's just because, we've had a view or a belief or a personal perspective challenged. And that's what gives rise to the conflict. So first one is just see the human being, be curious, think, what could be going on for that person? And then I have a methodology that I can share with you that basically you just write down. Actually, maybe hold on. I'll see if I can find it in my notebook of goodies here for you. It's something I found ages ago. It's something called the 9-box exercise, but you just write down a series of different things. And as I flick through my pages, if I take too long, then tell me, and I will come back to it later, or I can post it in the chat. Okay, cool. So there's a series of steps that you can go to. So number one, write down the name of the person. And you just do this as a written exercise, because what it does is it just takes the emotion out and makes it a lot more rational. Because what happens is when we're emotional, it floods the neocortex, which means that we lose our ability to reason. Then write some words down explaining what they did or didn't do. So what was the situation? 5 words. Then next, you write down, how do you feel when you think of that person? Again, it's to express in terms of emotions. Then number 4 is rate your emotions on a scale of 1 to 10. Number 5, how long has the conflict been going? And then do you want to resolve it? Because sometimes we don't always want to resolve conflict. Sometimes it's easier just to let things go, potentially. Next, what is my part in the conflict? Because we always think, oh yeah, it's just the other person. No, I had a part to play in this as well. So it's important to look at the ownership and the responsibility that I play. So then you want to write down your behaviors, your words, and your actions. Then the next one, number 7, is what impact have I had? So what impact has resulted as a cause of me being part of this conflict? And you can write down some empathic statements here, some empathetic statements. Number 8 is then, what do I fear the other person will say or do if I tell the truth? So a lot of the time when there's conflict, it just escalates and escalates because nobody actually talks to each other. It's he did this or she did that. And then actually what we need to do is get into a space where we're having a conversation with that other person before we look at escalating elsewhere, if it feels safe to do so. And then the last one is, how will I feel if my fears come to reality? And then you write down some statements. So this as a process I found I've used in a couple of scenarios where it had just got to a stage where these 2 women weren't talking. So I actually flew to Canada to resolve the situation because all the other managers hadn't been able to deal with it. And actually the first thing I did is I sat them both down and I just said, okay, I just want you to tell your life story in 2 or 3 minutes, and got them just to listen to the other person just talking about their life. And it was really fascinating that once they both shared, I asked them, okay, well, what did you hear in the other person? And they both had similarities in terms of how they struggled at different points in time, how they weren't taken seriously, how men had criticized their work. And, it created a space of commonality. But yeah, just that space of listening and being open is, I think, a critical part of dealing with conflict.
So it worked then finally that they were able to resolve the conflict as well.
It's like the last name.
Yep.
This is quite interesting. I think on this whole perspective, it's probably not just for work, even for personal life. I think it would help, to kind of understand what kind of conflicts do you really want to resolve them or not, what impact it has on you and the other person and things like that. So thank you for sharing.
No, pleasure.
Yeah, so just that we are coming to the top of the hour, and it has been quite engaging and interesting discussion. Didn't realize when did we cross 1 hour, but maybe some last questions before we end the session. So, like, what do you think are the leadership trends for the next 5 years? I'm not even saying 10 because it's too far. In the next 3 to 5 years, especially, what are the leadership trends? What is a good leader? And what can women do to be eligible, or eligible is a wrong word, but to be suitable for that kind of roles?
Well, women are suitable for those
No,
kind
no,
of
I mean
roles.
to be able to advance themselves to those roles. So what's a good leader for the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe that's a question. And what can women do to get there?
Okay,
Who
so
are not there yet?
women are there
Who are
already.
not there yet?
Um, so I think one of the keys, I really like this guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know who he is, or Gary V. And he talks a lot about kindness and empathy and all of these aspects that women bring naturally to leadership roles. And I think it's just more and more important, because if we look at the world, it is divided in a number of different ways. But when we build organizational cultures or team cultures, these are the key aspects that determine whether a team is going to be high performing and successful sustainably, rather than, okay, yes, you can hit high performance by pushing people, but then you burn them out. So all of these, this collaborative approach, the emotional intelligence, the vulnerability, the drive to listening, and empathetic and kind leadership, these are all the traits that I think are incredibly, incredibly important. And I wouldn't see, the thing is, I don't want to say it's a trend, because trends come and go. This is just a way of being that I think is needed in leadership. These old paradigms of leadership in command and control, or control and conquer, no, command and control.
It's
They're
old
just not.
school. Yeah.
It's old school. It worked in the 80s potentially, not that anybody liked it. And it was never sustainable. If you consider Jack Welch, who was hailed as an amazing leader of his day, I think he was just an arse. He would fire the bottom 25% of an organization. Fine if you're super overt about it and you sign up for it, and that's what you allow yourself to be in terms of a scenario and a situation, but it's toxic as a workplace. And I think that where I'd like to see things head towards is a kinder, more fulfilling, more sustainable workplace, and women are just better suited for developing that kind of leadership.
I think you summarized it very well, and I hope all the women, especially who are listening, they hear it and understand what's the value they bring to the table, other than their core skills, whatever it is, technical skills or sales or whatever. But and I completely understand, because I work in very, very male dominated teams,
Mm,
or
mhm,
the
mhm.
ratio is 90 to 10, and I
Wow.
completely feel that they are working like machines, targets,
Mm,
targets, targets, and they lack. And it's not their fault either, because they haven't been exposed to that
mm,
kind of environment, so they don't understand the empathy and
mm,
those kind of things. And it's so much needed in teams to be sustainable. I think, like
mhm.
you rightly said, that you can set crazy targets and achieve them for a year or two, but it's not a sustainable thing. Then somewhere the breakdown or meltdown will happen. So how
If
do you
if
keep
if you don't
healthy
have the
teams?
culture, yeah, if you don't have the culture to support it, I think the other thing that I was thinking about when you mentioned it is, women need to step into their, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong word, their femininity when leading. So don't lead like men, basically.
Mm,
Because I think there have been examples, and people I've spoken to and clients that I've had, where they've seen other women take on the traits or the leadership approaches that men had used. And actually, it's not very productive for women to do
mm,
that, because it means you're not stepping into your essence and your power. Don't try to lead like men. There are slightly different leadership styles, but it changes the energy dynamic. And then actually, those women are not very supportive to other women, because
mm.
there's still this notion of competition, which again, I don't think is particularly healthy. So yeah, I'm probably not phrasing it well, but there is a notion of, women leading as women, not women leading as men.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an unsaid expectation they build upon themselves, that
Mm,
to be as good as men, or if you want to be in the shoes where men are, then you kind of have to behave like them or act
mm,
like them. But I think probably in that you lose the true essence of yourself, what you bring on
mhm,
the table. So
mhm,
I
mhm.
think I never thought of this point, that yes, that's what many women end up doing, that to try to lead like men,
Yeah,
and then they lose the essence of what they were bringing to the table. I
yeah.
totally agree with you. And then they are not very good friends with the other women, because it again gets into the same dynamics, I understand.
Yeah, and then there's this notion of scarcity, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the only female at this level, so if somebody else is coming up, they're going to challenge my position. No, it should be more
True.
inclusive and more supportive and more
True.
collaborative. But yeah, this element of scarcity of women in leadership roles, again, that comes down to visibility. We need more women in leadership roles, who are then supporting and promoting more women through the organization as well.
Agree. Very interesting. Very good points made. I will also read through this and summarize some points what you've said. But Ramya, you want to say some closing
Yeah.
remarks as we're on top of the
Sorry
hour?
about the
Your
but,
voice is breaking, Ramya.
how about now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one last thing, maybe before we close out, it was very interesting, and I think we can keep going on with more questions, me and Vaishali, I think. But Dan, maybe to our audience, would you like to share what kind of coaching sessions that you offer, or a little bit more about you, on what kind of offerings that you have that would probably benefit them as well?
Sure. Maybe I can share a screen very quickly with you then, and maybe I can then show you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a few ways that that people can work with me if they're interested. I have a very reasonably priced leadership course. You can check out the preview on Udemy. I think it's about $200 there, but for you and your special ladies as part of the Indian Women in Finland group, then it's only $49.
Are you sharing we can see your desktop right now.
Oh, okay. So my technical expertise is not great. Hold on. What can you see?
Now, yes.
Now you can?
Yes.
Awesome. So what I was going to say is yes. So there's a course preview on Udemy. So this is about leadership. This is 9 core components of leadership, and I stand by this when I say that if you do all of these 9 things well and consistently, you will be better than 99% of leaders out there. It only takes about 2 hours to go through. They're short, bite-sized videos, and you get a worksheet at the beginning and then a guide at the end. But yeah, for you and your ladies, it's only going to be $49. So there's a special price on this site where I have things hosted. And then I've recently launched a group coaching course, which is $3.99 a month. And I'll just click into it, see what you get for that. You get lots of cool stuff. So you get group chats. We'd have a group on WhatsApp. You get 2 90-minute calls a week. And you also get thrown in a personal one-to-one coaching session with me as well. And then, yeah, tips, tricks, and strategies. So if you want to work with me, and there's only 8 women per group. So limited numbers, so to keep it small, communal, close, tight-knit, and supportive and psychologically safe as well.
Another way to network as well.
Yeah, 100%. So actually, that was the interesting thing. You two talked about the fact that you're super comfortable with networking, and you've got some networks. And Vaishali, you've probably known each other for a while, but maybe that's never come up in conversation. So yeah, actually bringing and cross-pollinating all of these different thoughts, ideas, and ways to support each other is just is super important. Community. So yeah, there's two main ways, and if you want to work one-to-one with me as well, I do have a couple of open slots, but that's a slightly different price point.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure there's so many interesting things here. I don't even know where to start, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to probably reach you after this as well. But all in all, I think there are a lot of learnings after today's session, be it networking, be it self-confidence, and be it how to learn from conflict resolution and understanding facts and things like that. So I think for me, at least personally, it was very, very valuable, and I'm sure Vaishali will agree as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you both for your questions. I hope I answered them fully. I have a feeling I waffled a little bit at some points, but thank you.
No,
for bearing with me.
I think, but we touched upon very good points, and like I said, I will make a summary and share it with the audience, other than the video also, because a lot of key points what you mentioned are very important in today's work life, and it need not be for women only, but for men, women, everyone, especially people who want to be or are already in the leadership roles, the kind of things they need to have. So there's a lot of good learning for me, and I'm sure it's for the audience as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
And
you
it's
both.
definitely very difficult to squeeze this in 1 hour, and especially with the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning, that you were very patient with us. So thank you
Yes.
so much. It was
Appreciate it.
great,
Yes.
great having you with us today. And
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
as well.
hopefully we'll have more sessions in the future as well. Thank you.
With pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.